Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ice Cold Takes podcast. I'm your host, Joey DeMeglio, and this week I'm joined by one of the toughest defensemen ever to lace up the skates in the 90s and early 2000s. He played 4 seasons with the Rangers and is known for starting the stick salute at center ice following home victories. I'm pleased to welcome Darius Kasparaitis. Thanks for joining me. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Thank you. I'm good.
Awesome. It's great to have you on. And a few weeks ago I was on Twitter, just scrolling through, and I saw an old commercial of you and Henrik Lundqvist surface. I don't know what it was. Lundqvist was talking to somebody, and all of a sudden you came in and body checked somebody, which is characteristic of you. I guess back in your playing days, and I followed by like with people. They were trying to get your name trending on Twitter. So they just kept tweeting your name over and over again. So that appreciation was there. Is that something that, at any point in your career you thought would happen? You'd have like a lasting legacy and have such an appreciation from fans, even years after you retired?
I didn't really when I played, I didn't really thought about those things because I just play hockey and just want to have fun and of course, play hard and win every game possible. But right now, 20 years later, every time I go to New York or Pittsburgh, and I see people still having my jerseys, it's like I guess I put an impact on a lot of people's lives as a hockey fans, and it makes me feel appreciated because I didn't really realize that because when you play when you're in the league and you play, you don't really care much. You kind of have your own bubble and you live you don't want to talk to anyone most time. You want to just play the game and live your own life. But when you're retired, you realize how important it is to be part of the fans' lives and be interactive with fans. And then when you get old, you appreciate things like that.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that you played for all rival teams. So you played with the Penguins, the Islanders, and the Rangers. And, to this day, all three of those teams have their rivalries. And it's interesting to see how, you go to a Penguins game, people have your jersey. You go to an Islander game, people have your jersey. And if you go to a Ranger game, people have your jersey. And I think that speaks to, that kind of player you were at the time. If you were on a fan's team, they loved you. If you were against them, then it was like such a pain to play against you. So that style of play, how did you kind of embody that from your earlier career? Like,
I don't
how did
really.
that come to being?
I don't really try to, have a style. I think when I was growing up in Soviet Union, everybody want to play finesse hockey because at that time Russian team was dominating in the international stage. It was the tic-tac-toe hockey. But same time, I knew when I played juniors and every time we play Canada or America, it was always tough hockey. You have to kind of get hit or hit somebody, and we always, had big battles. So I think from the day one, I had this in me, as the talent, I guess, playing a physical game and hitting people. But I didn't realize until I came to NHL that was so easy to do in the beginning because the ice surface was so much smaller than international ring at that time. So I just started hitting everybody, and I think Al Arbor saw that talent in me, and it kept me, playing more defensive game and playing its best lines from other team.
So you mentioned that the ice surface was smaller in the NHL compared to Russia, where it's a lot wider. So how much of an impact did that actually have on your play when you came over to the United States?
Oh, it was much easier to play physical game. It was much faster. I think the game was faster in NHL because it was no a lot of regroups or breakouts, and it was a more dump and chase, and that's why it was more physical. And I think that's why it was so much easier for me to find hits because I consider myself as a good skater, and I think it was so much easier to close gaps and catch guys off guard. Good old days when you can hit somebody with the head down. It was actually considered being talented. If you find somebody with a head down and finish a check, of course he has to have a puck. There was, huge talent. Now, most of the hits are not. It's illegal to do them most of the times. I don't know. It was just very easy transition for me. I was 19-year-old kid coming from Soviet Union, and coming to New York and putting in a lineup 3 days since I arrived. 3 days later, I was playing a first NHL game, opening against New Jersey Devils.
You know, I never got the chance to watch you play during your career, but my boss at the Old City Sports Network, Jesse, he shout out to them. Those guys are awesome. He's a big Flyers fan, and he's told me that, it used to be such a pain to watch you play. Again, like I said, you played for the Penguins, the Islanders, and the Rangers, and they all three of those teams rivals with the Flyers. So you must have had a lot of games against them where again, like you went up against big time players, Jean Leclerc, Eric Lindros, and you never backed down from a fight. I remember using you on NHL 07 on the PSP. I know a lot of people out there maybe listening would probably remember using you on the video game consoles, but it was so fun to use you as one of the skaters, one of the big open ice body checkers out there. So how did you know that relationship? I talked about Lindros, the relationship between you and Eric Lindros. I know he had called you and recruited you to the Rangers, but you had laid him out a few years prior. How did that relationship kind of develop between you two?
Oh, it was no, Eric called me and said it's no hard feelings. It's hockey. It was my fault. I had my head down, and you just finished a check. It was not a dirty hit, and we became good friends when we played for the Rangers. And it was no hard feelings. But I know playing Flyers a lot, especially when I play in Pittsburgh. There was a interstate rivalry, and we hated the Flyers, and they hated us. And I think up to this day, I think if if I ever go to a Flyers game and somebody realize it's me, I think I will be in trouble because I think people still hate me in Philadelphia until this day. Because I had a charity game a couple of years ago in Hershey, and this guy with the Flyers jersey was screaming, that I sucked, I'm a loser, and things like that. I was like, dude, that was like 20 years ago. Let it go. So I know some people still have a hard feelings towards me.
I was looking at a clip yesterday of an old Rangers Flyers game. At the end of the game, the Rangers were up. You guys were up 5-1, I think, and Donald Brashear went after you, and you guys kind of got into it. You didn't fight him back because I mean it was the end of the game. What were you gonna do? Why risk an injury? But you know, in that moment, something in that moment where it's like you're about to win a game and you're closing it out, was that like typical of you to just, not get involved in anything, keep yourself healthy, don't get in the penalty box, don't do something stupid? Was that something that you usually do?
Oh no, really, you have to choose your battles. Donald Bashir was a big man, and he's known as a tough, good fighter in the league. And I never considered myself as a fighter. I was more a hitter. So sometimes you have to choose your battles, and I knew that I have no chance beating a Donald Bashir in the one-on-one fight. So I guess I turtled there.
Yeah, especially it was at the end of the game, though.
Yeah, because sometimes that was my not game plan, but I usually end up driving other teams crazy and they want to just kill me. So that's why I usually drew a lot of penalties because people start being undisciplined and try to get into a fight with me, but I would never fight back. Sometimes I did if it was a Swedish guy or Finnish, I had my better chances beating them. But most of the time I tried to play physical, and those guys didn't like it, so they would take penalties, and I put my team on a power play. But yeah, at the end of the game, it's no point. I think it was just a frustration from some teammates from opposite bench, and they just wanted to send a message, I guess.
So, moving on to more time that you spent with the Rangers, I've heard many stories of how Henrik Lundqvist, was very competitive, especially during practice. You got the chance to play in front of him when he was just coming into the league as a rookie. So was he as competitive then as he was, during the prime of his career? Was it
Yeah, I think.
consistent all the way through?
Yeah, I think Henrik took everything so deep to his heart. Every loss, every bad game or every disappointment. I remember even talking to Kevin Weeks when he just showed up at the league, and every time he played, he would be so if we lost, next day would be so miserable. And I remember Kevin Weeks told him, listen, dude, you have to relax. It's a long season. You're gonna have bad games. You can't take everything so serious bad. But Hendrik was a very competitive person. He loved to win. He played he played a long time for one team, and that's why he's a king. And I think his professionalism, that's why he got him through this a lot of games in NHL and playing and breaking all the records for the Rangers. Because he took every day as the last day, and he prepared himself. He prepared himself for the games all the time with a very serious outlook. You cannot talk to him. You cannot joke. Sometimes we just joke around before the game, but not.
Did he ever scream at you or the other defenseman when the other team scored?
No, I played with him a year and a little bit. I didn't play much, so he was still a rookie. So if he did that, I would punch him out probably. But Hendrik. Hendrik was, he was, maybe at the end he was screaming at the guys, but in the beginning he was very shy, and he just took his side of the net, and he relied a lot on him, so he didn't really say much in the beginning.
I see. So at the time, when he's first coming into the league, he was still that competitive self that he was. Probably wanted extra shots during practice, but he wouldn't get on his defense. I understand.
Yeah, because when you as a rookie goalie, you can't scream at the veterans. That's unacceptable. I don't think even after this day, if some young guy comes in the league and you have a guy who played 12 years in the league and starts screaming at him, he wouldn't have a good time in the locker room after.
Yeah, so that I understand. You played with some key veterans during your time with the Rangers. You played with Lindros. You played with Jaromir Jagr. Did you spend some time with Brendan Shanahan too?
Yeah, we were on the same team for a year or so. Shanahan was a great leader. It's also one of the guys who I hate a lot during my career. Then I ended up playing on the same team. So it was fun to see him, because he came from the Detroit and all the winnings they had with the Red Wings, and he had a good stay in New York. He was a great leader. He was a very lovable guy.
You mentioned that you would hit him a couple of times. You'd hit Lindros more than a few times. You played against like Lemieux, or you played with Lemieux, then against Lemieux too. What was that? What are those transitions like when you go into the new locker room and you're now teammates with guys that you used to throw around the ice all the time? Like how did that transition kind of like smoothen out? Just
I
what is
think
it, growing pains, or was it immediate that you guys had good relationships with each other? How did that happen?
No, really, you have to prove yourself. You have to kind of get into a lot. Like when I got traded from New York to Pittsburgh, I was very nervous because I've used those guys during playoffs, so I didn't know what to expect. But I think as my character was very easygoing guy, so I think I always tried to be funny and make people feel comfortable. So I think people in the beginning maybe they didn't like me because from the past, but I think when I come to the new team and I get become a teammate, I think they see that I'm very funny guy and good guy to be around and have a lot of fun. So I think they start loving you. Same thing. I was having issues with Mark Messier. And when I came, Adam Grace. But when I came to the Rangers, I remember Messier was and at the end of his career, and we became good teammates, and it was no hard feelings. It's hockey. We get traded, we move around, and sometimes you don't like the guy in the beginning, but then you fall in love with him, and you become good friends.
I was listening to Kyle Hall of the Broadway Hat podcast, who had you on, I believe, last year. I was listening to that episode, and you were talking about how you came to the Rangers and how they treated you. They took care of you when you signed in free agency. How was all of that? Like, what did they do specifically that basically warmed your heart? That it was important. That makes the Rangers organization stand out from other places that you've been in your career.
Oh, even when I played for the Islanders in the Rangers, Pittsburgh, we always hated the Rangers to play against them, and I think going to a Madison Square Garden, playing there, the feeling you have there when you play, even when you come on a visiting team, was kind of, it was amazing. I always had this little feeling that one day maybe I'm going to play for the Rangers. And when free agency became available for me, I had three teams that offered me the same money: Rangers, Boston, and Toronto Maple Leafs. And of course, I choose the Rangers because at that time I consider myself New Yorker because I lived on Long Island most of my off seasons from Pittsburgh. So I was very excited to be back on New York, I didn't think twice to become a Ranger because it was kind of close to where I live and I knew the area. So. Of course, playing for New York Rangers, I think no matter what you say, it's one of the original six teams, and playing in New York City at the world's most famous arena almost every night. That's nothing you can compare anywhere.
I bet Islander fans really got on you for going to the Rangers over, maybe making a return possibly if they were ever in discussions with you.
No, you know what? It's so funny. Islander fans, they still love me after this day. But they told me if you never play for the Rags, which is the Rangers, you be a legend in New York Islanders. But because you play for the other enemy, so you kind of okay, but you're not at that pedestal like bossy or not. Because I play on the side. So they still love me, but they say, that was the biggest mistake in my career, joining the Rangers.
What are the iconic moments of during your time with the Rangers? In my opinion, is starting that stick salute. What made you come up with that? I know you said it was following Merrick Malik's shootout winner
Yeah.
in that super long shootout game against the Capitals, one of the most memorable games in NHL history, in recent memory, I'd say. That game, why that game in particular to start that?
Well, because it was, after lockout season, and our team was, we have a lot of new players on the team. And what happened, I think, it was so much, excitement after the game. Even Marek scoring the beautiful goal. So I kind of, skated to Yaromir and said, "Listen, let's go. Let's, take everybody in the middle of the ice and just raise the sticks." Because we do things like that in Europe, not specifically in the middle, but you just always thank the fans for participating in the game. So we did it that day, and people went crazy. So we decided to do every after every game we win. So we show appreciation to our fans, and I didn't know it was gonna stick, but it did. So. It's something that happened out of blue, but I'm glad that they still continue doing that.
Yeah, so that was like an organic move from your part then, huh?
Yeah, it was not planned. It was just happening on the bench because I was the last guy on the bench for the shootout, and Marek went in front of me. I asked Tom Rennie to put me before Marek, but thank God he didn't do it. So I was chosen the last one, but it didn't happen. So that was my celebration.
And now it's stuck. Like you said, it's stuck the salute to the crowd, not just with the Rangers, but every single team in the NHL has embodied that. The Carolina Hurricanes now have their own spinoff where they do
Yeah.
the storm surge and do some crazy stuff at the end. I don't even know what they do. It changes from time to time, but having that, did you ever think that would happen? Like something to that magnitude?
Not really. I think NHL was more like an old-fashioned league, so I don't think that people. When I implemented that after my first game, a lot of guys, especially North Americans, looked at me like I was crazy. What was weird doing? But because we had a lot of Europeans. If you look at the roster, that team, it was a lot of people from Europe playing on our New York Rangers 2000, I think 16. So a lot of guys understood what I want to do, my idea. But like guys like Steve Rushin was not really happy. He was like, what a weirdo. But then, it ended up working out good for everyone. But in the beginning, yeah, it was difficult, but it was fun now to see that a lot. Every time I go to a Panthers game or watch an NHL game and I see guys doing after the game, it makes me feel like I started that.
Yeah, now everybody's kept the ball rolling all these years after the fact, which is probably an unreal feeling. Do you still lace up the skates every now and then and go play like just on your own or?
Yeah. I play twice a week in Miami. Just like lunch hockey with a bunch of people who love playing hockey, and I love the game. I love playing. It's still I still feel very competitive, but not to the point that I have to hit somebody. Sometimes I do that. It's still in me, but it's fun. Hockey's fun.
You still keep up with today's NHL? Do you watch games still?
Yeah, especially playoffs. I watch not a lot of games. I wish I can. Why? I'm a father of 6 kids, so sometimes it's very hard for me to watch anything. But if I have chance to go watch live games, sometimes I get invited to go to Ranger games as an alumni. I always do that. Sometimes I go to Islander games, Pittsburgh sometimes. So it's fun. Like a little trip, like little vacation from my everyday life, and to go. But otherwise, I watch a lot of playoffs, and when the games are very mean a lot. And I follow the Panthers because I live not far from the Florida Panthers arena, so I go maybe like 10, 11 games a year here, but most time I watch stuff on TV if I can.
I was going to ask you, since you had spoken about the playoffs. I know the Panthers were one of the top teams in the regular season this year. Didn't go as far in the playoffs as some might have hoped. And then I was also going to talk to you about the Rangers and Jacob Trouba, him being named captain. I feel like he's sort of a similar style of player to you, not exactly the same, but you know, just the presence of mind for him to just constantly go after big body checks, to be a stand-up defenseman. Many claim that he's a dirty player, while others claim that he just lays big body checks. So, do you see like a little bit of yourself in him and Jacob Trouba?
Well, it's always I don't see like I think Trouba is a tremendous defenseman, and that's the reason they got him from Minnesota. And I think when they got him, I think he was more offensive defenseman. He became this more stay-at-home defenseman than playing a physical hockey, which is very rare to see now these days. And that's why people don't like it, because God forbid you're gonna hit somebody with the head down, so they make it such a big deal. But all the hits he made, it was perfectly nice and good timing, and it changed a lot of games because of that. People don't understand how important hitting is. I know we don't want to see people getting hurt, but we have to teach our kids to play hockey with the head up, because eventually somebody's gonna get hurt, because if you don't teach them from the beginning, you're gonna get hit. So there's no point having hitting in the game, because I think that's the fun part of the game, hitting and fighting, and being a hockey, being a physical as it is, it's fun to watch. If you just make scoring and dangling and dancing around, I don't think it's gonna be fun to watch anymore.
I think today's game is starting to shift towards more of a skill and speed oriented kind of game. And, there's less like designated fighters out there. Enforcers are all but dried out here in today's NHL. But you mentioned, keeping your head up. Back in the days when you played, it was a no-no if you were on the ice at the same time as Scott Stevens and you had your head down. If you were on the ice at the same time as you with your head down, it was a big no-no. So, you know, how would you try and like teach kids nowadays, to people coming up, like younger teenagers, even kids that have just already even been drafted by teams? How would you have them handle that pressure? If there's a guy like, there are still some guys that lay big body checks like Truba. How would you kind of handle that if you were a coach?
Oh, because I think you have to always know when everybody is on the ice. When you get the puck, you always have to look around. Don't expect skating without getting hit. And that's why it's very important to teach kids from the beginning. I was skating a couple days ago with a bunch of NHL players. I don't want to mention the names. And all they do is just they always look at the puck. They don't look at the body anymore. They try to get the puck from the when you play. I know it's just a pickup game, but still. I would never have my head down and look at the puck. I always look at the person's body, where it's going, the way I can keep them. But these days, a lot of players look down because that's how they're being taught. or they're not being taught to keep their heads up. So it's very important. But you know what? I'm telling you, if somebody's going to win a Stanley Cup with a lot of physical defensemen, it's gonna be like New Philadelphia Flyers. They'd be like, oh my god, you know what I'm saying? This guy's won a cup with all the stuff. Like Blues did a couple of years ago. They were a very tough team, and so right away next year people try to bulk up and get players on their teams that they can hit and play physical game. So I think it's gonna happen. This year Colorado was very fancy and schmancy, but. Next year, maybe somebody's going to win who's very rugged and playing physical hockey, and I think it's gonna come back eventually. Because eventually you have to pay the price to win, and you have to know how to make people pay the price to win.
I agree. I think the Rangers also have made some moves over the past couple of years, getting guys that are more like sandpaper, like a Barclay Goodrow, Ryan Reeves,
Yeah.
and Vinny Trocheck now too, who could play great at both ends of the ice. And another skill I think that today's NHL defensemen need to have is speed in their skating, getting out of the zone quick. If you can't if you can't get out of your zone quick, then you're gonna tilt the ice in your direction. The other team's gonna spend a whole lot of time in there. So if you can't skate it out, then what's the point? You have to kind of you you can't just be like a huge body checker. You have to be
Yeah.
able to skate too. Like you said too, you weren't just a big body checker. You felt that you were a good skater too.
But listen, the reason they think that way right now because nobody's getting hit, like guys don't get hit, so they have to skid it out. But if you start hitting guys, they have to play the old-fashioned hockey game. They have to get the puck off the glass. You know what I'm saying? And go try to do a forecheck. And I think they're still being taught that way, especially during playoffs. Get a puck out of the zone as fast as possible. I know we all want to see nice first pass, but sometimes it's not available. And if you want to skate it out, believe me, forwards are good skaters too. So it's still, the moment forwards going to start hitting these, so nobody's going to start skating. Everybody's going to start shooting a puck out of the zone.
Right. So I see. So as soon as that pressure is on, and you might not always have that option to skate it out or pass it to your other defenseman.
Yeah,
Or
you have
the
to move
winger.
the puck as fast as possible. That's why we always had breakout. You get a puck DDD and move right away. You can take the puck and try to skate around the zone because it's very hard to do that. And even when I play, I think maybe we're not as talented as the players today, but you still had to make the first pass, and the faster you make it, the better it was.
What did you think of the Rangers season this past year? I know you watch mostly when the games matter during the playoffs, but that playoff run they had was pretty incredible, was it not?
Yeah, you know what was I think surprised a lot of people. I don't think they were kind of in the shadows all year long, and they play very good hockey. That was a fun team to watch. Unfortunately, they didn't beat Tampa, but I think the 2 rounds they had a great hockey, and I think it gave a lot of hope for this year to people, to come in and try to repeat that, and maybe go even higher to the finals.
Yeah, that was my next question I was going to ask you about for this year. Now that they've made some minor acquisitions, some minor adjustments, Ryan Carpenter in the bottom six. The big one is Vinny Trocheck for ideally the second line center position. So do you think they're ready to take the next step? Maybe take it to a game 7 in the Eastern Conference Final, make it to the Cup Finals this year. Can you see that happening?
It can happen because usually it's 2-3 year window when the team succeeds in playoffs, and I think Rangers have the window. If you look at the Carolina Hurricanes, the same thing. They've been battling in the first, second, third round for the past couple of years. Same thing happened to Islanders. Remember a couple of years ago, they made they didn't make it past first round for like 20 years, and suddenly they, went round one, round two. So I think Rangers have the ability to succeed again this year, and as long as they stay healthy, and as long as Shesterkin is playing his head off as they did last year, so I think they have a good chance.
One last question for you. So I can't believe I haven't even mentioned this already, but seeing as you were a former defenseman, the Rangers have one of the best defensemen currently in the NHL today, Adam Fox. What about his game, impresses you the most?
Well, a lot reminds me of Brian Leach. I think maybe Brian Leach was a better skater, but the calmness, the confidence with the puck, I think, and the vision of the ice, Brian Leach was like that. So, it's very good comparison, to Brian Leach. But yeah, I didn't really have realized until he won a Norris Trophy a couple of years ago that it was so good, until I started watching after that. And yeah, he's a great defenseman. He always, every time the Rangers score or something happens, he's always involved. So I think he's great. It's great to have him.
Yeah, and I think on him having him, and then on top of all the other younger defensemen like Ryan Lindgren, the Rangers have another physical defenseman, Braden Schneider, Keandre Miller. It seems like a good crop of young defensemen that they have there.
Yeah, they D was good last year. The top six were unbelievably good. Especially with the youth and confidence they had. And I don't think they panicked. They always played a calm game, a physical game. And I think they're going to mature more this year. So I think Rangers have a good future.
Yeah, and I guess I could ask you one last Florida Panthers related question. The biggest acquisition, arguably this offseason by any team, has been Matthew Tkachuk of the Florida Panthers. They had to give up Jonathan Huberdeau, but what did you think of that move?
Well, I think Huberdeau had an unbelievable season. He played good, but I think when playoffs came, unfortunately, I think Jonathan disappeared, and which is a lot of players do that. When it becomes very physical, it's sometimes hard to find points. And you start feeling more intense. And I think Kachuk is a player like they needed like that, because I don't think he really cares about points. He's a very pesky guy. And I think guys like that are very good for the team like Panthers, because they have a lot of skill. Kachuk is very skilled player too, but I mean, they need somebody like that who can, get dirty and get the team going. And I think it is a great trade, for both teams. I think Calgary and the Panthers. I think he's gonna have a tremendous season coming from Winnipeg to Miami. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
hopefully he can survive the first year.
Definitely one of my favorite players, Matthew Tkachuk. I was praying that the Rangers would try and make a trade for that kid, and it didn't end up happening, unfortunately. But I mean, he's one of those players, like you said. I guess that when the playoffs come around, he just takes it to a whole nother level, kind of like a Braden Point for Tampa Bay. And then there's other players, like you mentioned, that when the playoffs start, for whatever reason, they don't do as well. Is that like a sort of a mental, if you had to guess like a reason for why that might happen for a player, is that you think that's a mental side of it, or is it just that everybody else gets better while they just stay the same?
It's just a lot of expectations, because guys get 100 points a year per season, for example, like Hubbard. So expectations, playoff time comes, the fans, people expect them to be exactly the same way, score goals, get assists, and the game is tight. It's very hard to find goals. Because the teams are playing, very tight hockey. So sometimes they put so much pressure on themselves, so they couldn't do anything about it. So I think guys like guys who are usually like Brandon Point, they always play in the shadow of Kucherov and Stamkos. So he always doesn't care. In playoffs, he just continues playing exactly the same way as he did in the season. That's why he's very successful. And I think that's what happened with the Rangers too. For example, Panarin, they didn't have I don't think he had a great playoffs. He played good, but not as good as Mika Zibanejad. So it happens, it always happens. It's always new heroes when playoff starts. Sometimes not the star players, but like second, third line, forwards, or second, fourth defenseman who makes the game different.
I guess that's why you need to have a whole team, that a well balanced team that anybody could contribute at any time.
Yeah, that's why I think it's very important to have a balanced team, and and you can tell, that's why Colorado was so successful, because they had a very good skill, but also very balanced team. And even with not a very good goaltending, they still won a cup.
Right. Yeah. Everything else in front of them was good. The defense was solid. I'm sure you appreciated that, but that offense was stellar. Just, keep going at your face, nonstop forecheck, and
Yeah,
it worked. Very persistent.
it was a fun team to watch, of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, Darius, thanks so much for doing this with me. We've run out of time.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Ice Cold Takes fans, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.